save his world. He needs a hero.
I am the greatest swordsman that ever lived.
Instead, he's got a reckless warrior. And it's all downhill from there. From George Lucas and Ron Howard.
You are great.
Willow, rated PG. Starts Friday. Check newspapers for a theater near you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cinemarcade. This is the podcast about movies, video games, and the sparks that fly when those worlds collide. And this week is very exciting for us. For those of you who have been following our lore very intensively, this is us finally closing the books on a long overdue check that we cashed early on in the show. We are talking about Willow. That's right. We are revisiting our famous lost episode. And God help me, if it doesn't record this time, then we're just never talking about this movie ever again. But here's the thing. We had just exactly enough space between that first recording and this one that it's all fresh. It's all new. I'm excited to talk about it. I'm never unhappy to talk about Willow. I am your host, Steve Guntley, who's joining me here today, as always.
I am the person who will not be messing with her microphone to cause the last episode, J-Ban.
Lesson learned. Oh, and who else is with us today?
I am Justin, the person who had to mess with their microphone a lot to do this episode.
That's true. Yeah, you were giving us a scare right up the top. So yeah, I'm glad we got that sorted out. And, the silver lining to every cloud, of course, is that, the first time we talked about it, it was just the three of us. But this time, this gives us opportunity to talk with an old friend of the show who is very passionate about this particular movie. So I'm glad this got to work out for you. Who is joining us here today?
I'm JR Ralls, and I am the greatest sorcerer who has ever lived.
I had a feeling. I read that about you. I saw your updated LinkedIn. I'm glad you got the promotion. That's amazing.
Yep. I had to beat out Bob from accounting for the title, but in the end, I just wanted it more.
That's okay.
I'm from the podcast Talking Terrific Television, which Steve and I did. I'm from 30-20-10, 80s in Depth, and an Elm Street Nightmare, all of which I'm not doing. This is my triumphant return to podcasting after...
Oh, this is the official return. Yeah.
This is the official return. I haven't done anything since 2025, so yeah.
Yeah, 30-20-10 was a very big, early kind of foundational podcast for me, and I just started being a regular listener. Rather like you, I think we both kind of sort of wormed our way into the world of this podcast and kind of became friends with all these dudes. So it's I'm still smarting. I'm still kind of missing my weekly 30-20-10 hit, but I'm glad you're getting a little bit more free time.
Well, if you listen to the reruns, it just becomes 40-30-20 and it still works.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are excited to be revisiting this movie. This is a classic high fantasy movie that came out in a time when high fantasy was just not seen as marketable. It's a franchise. I think we can call it a franchise. Can we call it a franchise if half of what the franchise is has been vanished into the void?
That's smarts.
It's smarts.
I do not consider it a franchise at this point in time because the thing that would make it as a franchise has legally been banished to the netherworld.
Exactly. We'll get into all of that chicanery. I just kind of want to go around the horn here and see everybody's experience with Willow. Now, JR, you were very excited to talk about this movie. What's your history with this film in particular?
Huge history with Willow. Willow is one of the earliest movies I can remember being excited for before it came out. I was 10 years old when Willow came out, so I was the direct market for Willow. And I like Star Wars, and it was, from the maker of Star Wars. And I was on their day one. I came out of the theater overjoyed. I remember telling my dad, "This is the new Star Wars," and him going, maybe.
Well, it's a movie.
It's a movie, yeah. But I bought Willow merchandising. I bought the Willow board game, which I played incessantly with my friends and was like really obsessed. I'm going to save the board game discussion for the video.
I want to hear about this. Yeah.
Yeah. But I watched it numerous times and I didn't understand that it wasn't a success. To my 10-year-old brain, this was a huge movie. Everyone had merchandise about it. So obviously we're going to get sequels, right?
It was a pretty big movie. It was a success. Like, it made 130 on a 30 budget, I think.
Yeah, but it did okay.
It made 3 times its budget, which
it just
is
didn't
not
do
bad.
Star Wars numbers. Yeah, I think, and the bar was raised so high for anything Lucas was touching at that time.
I think if it had been made by anyone but George Lucas, we would have gotten a sequel.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would put out there that I think Willow walked so Lord of the Rings could run.
That was really hitting me a lot this time. Rewatching.
This rewatch, it's just like so much of it is in like so much of the Lord of the Rings has the ambiance of Willow, and I think that is like one of the reasons why we have Lord of the Rings, and it was because I think Lord of the Rings is in a lot of ways a sequel to Willow.
At least spiritually.
The story Lord of the Rings came out like way before Willow.
Yeah.
So the deal is George Lucas.
But getting a fantasy movie made has always been a difficult endeavor, and Willow is one of the few fantasy movies that actually made a profit before Lord of the Rings.
That's true.
Very fair. We got to put ourselves in the mindset of your 1987 MGM executive. You know, they're looking at a big budget fantasy film. What are they going to look at? Kroll, Legend, Dragon Slayer, Labyrinth? None of those were huge, gigantic hits. So you're absolutely right. This is the biggest fantasy success before Lord of the Rings, 100%.
And yet this movie still kind of had the stink of box office failure to the point where, like, what is the big fantasy movie of the 90s? Like, there kind of isn't one. There were a few isolated movies here and there, but the genre wasn't really taken seriously again, period, until Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
And even then, we didn't get a lot of high fantasy. We didn't.
No.
I don't know. The problem with high fantasy is that you have to create an entire different world.
You do.
And guess what? Creating a different world is kind of expensive.
Yeah. Jabin, was this a movie for you when you were young?
Oh yeah, I loved Willow when I was young. I was crazy about it. I think it was formative in me wanting to become a sword girl in addition to Cutthroat Island. I think that I rewatched this movie so many times as a child because it really hits, I think, the childlike wonder with the adventures, and you don't notice it's kind of got a long runtime, but you don't notice that, especially as a child. And it's just like it holds a very special place in my heart because I'm just like, I love the fact that there's so many MacGuffins in the world of cinema, but to having a Laura Dannon, the wee little baby, as the MacGuffin, I love how they kept panning to her, and she has this cute face like every single time.
Cherubic, such a cutie.
Such a cutie, and it's just like something that I just love because I don't think a MacGuffin has ever been cuter than in Willow.
Now, Justin, I have to ask you, I kind of know the answer already, but do you remember much of what I know the last time we watched this for our first recording was your first time seeing it. Did you retain much of this, like in between viewings?
I think I retained about 3 minutes at the beginning, and that was the rest of the movie was an adventure for me.
Okay, so you got to discover it again.
Office, so I'm just sitting there watching this movie going like, hey, this is pretty good.
Yeah. I
genuinely was like, this is surprising to me that I forgot because it is a pretty solid movie.
It feels very Justin coded. It feels like a movie kind of built to appeal to you. So I'm glad that it continued to appeal. Yeah.
So I rewatched it for this podcast, and I'd already seen it with my son. He doesn't really do reruns. So I got my wife to watch it, and she was like, I think I'm pretty sure I saw it on HBO back in the day, but hasn't seen it in 30 years plus. Started watching and was like, I don't remember a thing about this. And by the end, she was like, that was a really good movie. I'm surprised, because a lot of times when I have her watch things from my childhood, it's not quite that.
It's
Right.
hit or miss. I think it helps that we had Ron Howard at the helm here, and we'll get into that. Actually, that's a good time to start talking a little bit about the history of Willow, which was released May 20th, 1988. It's directed by Ron Howard and written by Bob Dolman, and it stars Warwick Davis, Val Kilmer, Joanne Whaley, Jean Marsh, Patricia Hayes, Pat Roach, Gavin O'Hurley, Rick Overton, Kevin Pollak, Phil Fondacaro, Julie Peters, and Billy Barty. Now, in the late 1980s, so if you grew up like in the post Star Wars boom, like I was born the year that Return of the Jedi came out, so I'm kind of like born in the aftermath of the Star Wars phenomenon. But that initial run was so unbelievably massive that everybody was just kind of waiting with bated breath to see what George Lucas was going to do next. And the answer for much of the 80s is just kind of faffing around doing some weird shit. We had which didn't work. We had a movie called Twice Upon a Time, which I know really nothing about. And we have, of course, the first Marvel superhero film, Howard the Duck, which is kind of an unmitigated disaster by pretty much any standard. So critics were kind of ready for Lucas's latest project with Knives Out, basically.
To be fair, in the 80s, he was also doing Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, and then after this would come Last Crusade. So, he was pumping out some hits in the 80s, but I agree.
He was doing some of that.
It is a weird time for him.
It's a weird time. Like, this is where he's producing like Radioland Murders and like stuff like that. And Indiana Jones was always kind of a little more Spielberg's baby. It felt a little bit more like his project after the first movie. So yeah, he's casting around. He's trying for some new things. And one thing that he always really, really wanted to do was high fantasy. It might surprise you to learn that George Lucas grew up kind of a dork. And he really liked like high fantasy stuff like JR Tolkien and a bunch of stuff like that. So he started developing the idea for this story even before Star Wars. He started writing this in 1972, and the script was originally going to be called Munchkins. It was aimed at younger children, but Lucas had to wait until the technology of the era caught up to his vision. And in the meantime, he made American Graffiti, which starred, of course, a young... It is. Yeah, it very much is. Yeah, it absolutely is. He made this movie, American Graffiti, which stars Ron Howard, who was a child star from the 60s, who was kind of transitioning into kind of teen heartthrob status to the degree that he was a teen heartthrob. American Graffiti would kind of spin off a little bit, like kind of lightly spin off into Happy Days. It's not like a 1-to-1, but it's a little bit of like a spin off of Happy Days, which also starred Ron Howard. And so he was kind of an actor throughout the 70s. His career started to stall, and so he became a director, working on movies like The Night Shift and Splash, which was a really big hit. In 1985, he's working on this movie called Cocoon, which is going to go on to be a big, big hit in 1986. And yet we still cannot find it streaming anywhere. It annoys the fuck out of me. It's one of those movies that just disappeared.
I was thinking about that. I was looking for it today as I was looking at Ron Howard's filmography, and I remember Cocoon so much from my childhood and being thoroughly entranced, but only have the vaguest recollection of what happened. And I'm like, I would love to rewatch Cocoon.
It's just gone. Yeah.
Cocoon is probably the biggest film from all of the 1980s that I've yet to see.
It was, that's the thing. It was a huge, huge hit. I don't really know what the rights issue is that's holding that up from being released on streaming or on DVD, but there is one out of print DVD from like 20 years ago that is pretty low res, and it's packaged with the very inferior sequel. And of course I own a copy, and of course it's all scratched up and it doesn't work. So, I have not watched Cocoon in a long time. But it's a charming movie. It's a lot of fun.
Apparently it might be music licensing issues.
I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I don't even remember what licensed music they used, but yeah, I would not be surprised
it
at
may or
all.
may not be on archive.org.
Well, hit me up with a file for that maybe later. We'll have a conversation.
I'll put it in the chat.
But either way, Lucas had dropped by the set of Cocoon to chat with his old buddy, and they started talking about this project that he was working on. And Ron Howard was also a big fan of high fantasy, so he immediately signed on to do that. Now, they hired a TV writer named Bob Dolman to draft a screenplay, and the project was off and running. However, even with all this prestigious names behind the camera, the project had trouble finding funding. Now, a lot of that was for the list of movies that JR said earlier. We had back-to-back flops in Dragon Slayer, Krull, Legend, and Labyrinth. Dark Crystal was kind of the one movie in that era, like that is in a fantasy genre that made money, but that movie was such a pain in the ass to make that nobody wanted to make another Dark Crystal. And then Labyrinth did not follow up on the success of that, even though, of course, it's become a major cultural moment. But yeah, so anybody was reluctant to kind of touch this sort of stuff. It's very expensive. It's very involved. It requires a whole lot of craftsmen and a whole lot of very specific casting. And so it's kind of a hard boulder to push up the hill. Now, Lucasfilm got co-financing from a struggling MGM, which they perceived as a risky move, but Lucasfilm wound up footing much of the bill itself. And that bill wound up being about $40 million, which was quite expensive for 1988. A movie, on average, cost about $15 million around this time. So this is quite a bit. Last time JR was on was for another 1988 movie, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which was seen as like a potential cinematic death blow because it cost $70 million to make. And if that didn't make money, then basically Disney would have died. So yeah, that kind of gives you an idea of how like big of a production this was. And they didn't have a star attached. Who they had attached was an 18-year-old actor who had never appeared on film showing his own natural face. This is Warwick Davis. He had auditioned to play the role of Wicket the Ewok in Return of the Jedi in 1983 when he was 11 years old. And he got to play that iconic part. Yes, he got to hug Harrison Ford's leg. He lived the dream that we all have had. And then he got to reprise that role for 2 made-for-TV Ewoks movies. I don't know if anybody here has baggage with the Ewoks movies. I watched the fuck out of Battle of Endor when I was a kid many times. Did you
know Warwick named his son after Harrison Ford?
Oh, that's cute. I love that. Yeah.
They're really good mates.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, those Ewok movies were big hits. They're kind of seen as this weird sort of apocrypha for Star Wars fans, but it helped make Warwick Davis like a very significant part of the Star Wars canon. So obviously he's in the Lucasfilm fold, and this character was kind of written with him in mind.
Here's my favorite thing to mention about Ewoks. Ewoks is a household word. Everyone knows Ewoks.
Yes.
The word Ewok is never mentioned once in Return of the Jedi.
That's true, right? Yeah, that's really weird. They never actually say what it is until those TV movies, and there's an animated spin-off as well. But
that's how big the marketing was for it, and we were all loving Warwick Davis as a God, I can't imagine like a 12, a 13-year-old just in the Star Wars universe. That had to be insane for him.
And he's young enough, he's only born in 1970. So he's 7 years old when the first Star Wars comes out. Obviously, that's going to make a huge impact on you at that age. And then just like to be a fan of the series and then get to be in the movie with Han Solo is kind of crazy. So he's a person with dwarfism, so he's got a very specific look. Obviously, he's gone on to have a really huge franchise career. Like he's been in Harry Potter, he's been in Leprechaun, he's been in a little bit of every major franchise over the last couple of years.
His career has been varied, very varied, which I think is really awesome because a lot of actors always get typecast. Yeah. And he's played so many different types of characters. I remember when I was a kid and I watched Leprechaun, I was like, oh my God, this guy is terrifying. And then I found out later that he was Willow, and I was like, no way in hell.
That was only like 4-year gap between Willow and Leprechaun. So he's still like quite a young man when he's doing the Leprechaun movies. Those movies are wildly silly, but he's very committed and he's a lot of fun in them. And it is like a showcase for him as an actor, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well,
but this
we
is
gotta
him.
remember-
He's a fresh-faced 18-year-old kid.
So yeah, we've got to remember that in the 1980s, 1990s, and most of the 2000s, Warwick Davis was the little person actor. It wasn't really until Peter Dinklage in Game of Thrones that anyone would like really think of a different little person actor other than Warwick.
Of course.
And I think it's one of those things where, like, they kind of like George Lucas clearly was like, this guy's good. And he,
Which I do wonder, how do you spot a 12-year-old as being like, I am inspired by you. I'm going to build a multi-million-dollar movie, which I want to be the next Star Wars around you, a 12 or 13-year-old actor.
I think he was 15 when the last Ewoks
Math wouldn't
finished.
Oh, the last Ewoks TV movie. Okay, that could work.
And so that
But in
is-
Jedi, he would have been 12 or 13 because
Yeah,
he's 18
right.
in 1988.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely whatever that audition and first performance was must have blown Lucas out of the water, and he just because I haven't seen the Ewok stuff, but he killed it.
He was almost not Wicket because he actually became Wicket because the original person cast as Wicket was got sick.
Yeah.
And so then he stepped in and he nailed it. Like Wicket is
I mean, I think
incredible
it's
character.
I think it's a matter of George Lucas spending kind of 4 years working with a child actor and seeing them grow and being like, this is the trajectory. This is, and clearly by 1988, when he is, I think he said 18, 17, he does a very good job with like facial performances and like the physicality of it. I don't think there was any point where I pointed. In fact, I honestly assumed he was like 25.
And that's I think a lot of people did. Like he can play a little older than he is, but
he plays a father.
He does. Yeah, he's a father of two, you know, and like I think the actress playing his wife is quite a bit older than him, you know. So yeah.
His children are talking, so they're presumably like 5. I don't know. They seem
at
pretty
least,
coherent. And so he's playing like a almost 30-year-old man potentially, and is able to pull it off without anybody looking at it and going, "No, he's too young for this."
Yeah, I never questioned it, and honestly, even watching it, knowing that it doesn't look to me, you know, I don't know. They cast him really well, or gave him makeup, or gave him clothes, or he just acts 30 really well.
He's got that fantastic mane of hair that's really helping. Yeah. He's just got an excellent like fantasy haircut. But you know, either way, if you're MGM and you're thinking like, okay, you wanting $40 million for this movie, like we need a name actor to put above the credits. So they brought in Val Kilmer. Val Kilmer was very hot at this moment. He's coming off of Top Gun, which we've covered on the show, and he's sort of emerging as like, oh, this guy could be the next like big movie star. This was sort of one of his early leading man kind of swashbuckly roles, which I feel like every major actor has to have like one role like this, right?
Yeah. Well, I had a heterosexual man crush on Val Kilmer when this came out, and I loved him in Real Genius. That was a staple of Blockbuster or whatever rentals at the time. And when I was watching it with my wife, I turned to her and said, you know, when I was 10, I always thought Mad Morgan was the coolest guy in the entire world. And she went, yeah, he kind of is, though.
No, he kind of is. And, you know, if people forget that Val Kilmer, for as pretty as he is, he came from the comedy world. Like his first 2 movies were Top Secret and Real Genius, which are classic 80s comedy. Top Secret in particular is airplane level silly. Like it's very, very funny, and he's really good in it. And it's his first movie ever. So it's kind of strange to see him transition into sort of this like serious leading man action career in the 80s and 90s. Just further demonstrating the passage of time since we last recorded this episode. We've lost 4 members of the cast of Willow, like including Val Kilmer, which and only very recently Jean Marsh, who played Bav Morta, I think passed away about a month ago. So
That was something that I thought of as I was sitting there watching his first scene, and I'm like, God damn, he looks so like not like super young, but he plays like in the prime of their life, like handsome so well.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I had that moment. I was like, oh, he's passed away since the last time, because I feel like it was not too long. I say not too long, but we still had when he passed away. I think we might have mentioned it because we're like, yeah. I think it might have been closer to Top Gun when that happened.
It might, but that might have been.
Yeah.
So when we did Top Gun.
He was in the Top Gun reboot. Not reboot, sequel.
Oh, really?
Wasn't he?
I haven't seen it
Yes,
yet.
he was. But yeah, like Mad Mardigan is so like everyone is so attractive in this, and
Yes.
they're just like, and their chemistry is off the charts. So much so, it's always so interesting when they have chemistry on screen and they end up getting married.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that it's an incredible. Okay, there's some downsides to it. This is a George Lucas love story, so we're going in there knowing that it's not going to be handled that well, and I don't know if I can bring in outside of movie lore, but it is developed a lot better in the books and the Willow source book. For Sorsha is gorgeous beyond belief. I think 1988 was a sexual awakening for me with Sorsha and Jessica Rabbit, two redheads in the same year.
Two double redheads,
that just blew my 10-year-old mind. And but in the novel, we see her turn much, much better because her father was the king who Bad Morda froze in ice, those ice people at the end. There's a cut scene that they filmed, and they really should have left it in, where Sorsha encounters her father frozen in that magical ice, and her father can still talk to her and beg her to let him free. And that's when she really realizes, oh shit, my mom's the bad guy. And that would have worked so much better for her turn, because the love story in this is very weak. But if you read the novel, you can read how Sorsha was raised by Bad Morda, unsurprisingly, without a lot of affection. Who would have guessed that a mom named Bad Morda wouldn't have showered their kid with love? So she was starved for affection. My favorite thing is she had a cat that she loved very much and was her only friend. And Bad Morda really wanted Sorsha to learn magic, so she kept practicing magic, and Bad Morda gave Sorsha a wand and said, attack the rats. And then she blindfolded Sorsha and just said, attack anything that moved. And then Bad Morda had Sorsha kill her cat, who was her only friend, because she thought it was a rat. And she applauded this, and Sorsha swore off magic and would never do magic again. And that's why she's a fighter, not a magician. And there's all this lore that is honestly way better than what we see in the movie. And I do love what we see in the movie, but it's the George Lucas unlimited power problem. He needed his editor, his wife, who edited Star Wars, and could come in and say, no, this doesn't work. He needed the writer of Empire Strikes Back, Irvin Kershner, to come in and say, these are great bones. I'm going to turn it into a house. And I think if George Lucas had stepped off and had a little more people who told him no in Willow, it could have been a franchise.
Was he the sole writer?
No. He was like, he gets a story credit. The writer's a TV guy named Bob Dolman. And I think this movie, I agree with you completely. I find the best Lucas projects are the ones that kind of get wrested away from him a little bit, and like can kind of check some of his more destructive urges. And I don't know what everybody's experience with Ron Howard as a filmmaker is. I think the knock against Ron Howard is that sometimes he tends to play it a little safe, that his movies are not like super stylistically embellished or have a very particular visual kind of auteurist style, but he keeps things on rails.
I think he's definitely a journeyman director, but he has moments of like unbelievable greatness, but even he never gets too weird, and except for like in Willow and Splash and some of his early stuff, where he actually takes a little bit, I think, more risks. But I feel like his great run with starting with Apollo 13, in the 90s and the early aughts, were so interesting, and then he sort of got bogged down in the Robert Langdon sort of cycle.
Yeah, that's right. We have covered him before with we covered the Da Vinci Code movie and game. Yeah, those were a little rough. Yeah, no, Apollo 13 is kind of like dad movie Mount Rushmore, like pretty fucking perfect cinematic experience. And I think you need somebody who, I mean, this movie has such like a very clear, like this is pretty much exactly the archetypal hero's journey. Like this is that perfect arc, like by the letter.
It's funny,
and part of it.
Sorry, it was funny. I feel like Ron Howard is very similar to Stephen King. Like when you talk about Stephen King's like non-horror or even his horror milieu, like It, where there's like this focus on family and like on and friendship, and I feel like Ron Howard and Stephen King have the same sort of like vibe that was so popular in the 80s and 90s. Yeah,
it's just kind of like clean, efficient storytelling, and you're going to get like a lot of bang for your buck. Like this thing you mentioned, this movie is it's 2 hours, but like this is not a 3-hour epic. This is for 2 hours for a fantasy story. It's pretty tight, especially for one that's very self-contained. It doesn't really leave any breadcrumbs for future endeavors, and it just kind of moves. Like from the moment it starts, you're just kind of like on the track.
There's not really any points in the movie where I was like, God, this movie's still going. When it finished, I was like, that honestly, I thought we probably could have got another 5-10 minutes out of that.
Yeah. No, it really doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of extraneous stuff on here. You know, you could maybe argue some of like there's a greater like human war, like kind of going on outside the periphery of the story. But I really like that is all in the margins. You know, that is not the focus of this story. That's just the world in which this is taking place.
Well, there's epic high fantasy, and then there's sword and sorcery.
Right.
Sword and sorcery is a couple of guys. You know, it's where a small group, your standard D&D party, for example, can make a difference. High fantasy is where you get in the huge, gigantic armies and stuff. And this isn't trying to be that. You know, again, the source material says the Knights of, I'm forgetting it, the Knights of Not Gondor.
Exactly. I literally just finished and I forgot the name of the castle, but it's the other kingdom.
Are not designed to be a huge army. Their role is actually a peacekeeping force. They're kind of like the Jedis in that. They're not designed to actually fight wars. They're designed to keep the peace in the kingdom. So it's not meant to be like these two gigantic armies clashing. It's meant to be these two raiding parties are clashing.
It's kind of like if you had Lord of the Rings, but only the hobbits and the rest of the story is not direct, like not super related. Like, there's stuff going on, but you just follow a couple hobbits and see their impact on the world, and they're not part of this big organized effort. I say big, I mean it's not like the biggest organized effort, but it's like it's planned out, it's strategized. Many leaders of many groups are aware of what's happening. Whereas in this case, it is just a small band of 4 people, 5 for a little bit, then 4. Because you have the the
Nelwyns. The Nelwyns at the beginning are kind of setting out, and then like the Daikini or the Brownies, the 2 little guys. The Brownies. And
then you have your Han Solo-esque character.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
And it is. Oh, sorry, Jacob.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting the way they start off the movie, establishing Willow as a family man, and definitely like in his like so many of these fantasy novels or movies and novels start off with like a youth on a hero's journey. Instead, we have a grown man who's got problems and babies and a wife and a house and a farm field, and he's still got dreams, though. He's still got dreams.
He still has desires of being more, but he's not like racing to accomplish them.
So he's much more of a Frodo than like a Luke Skywalker. Yeah, he's very settled and content.
More, like he's not even like a Frodo, because Frodo is still a young man who has no obligations. Willow is a man with obligations.
Yeah,
and he has this paternal force, and so rarely in movies do you see a paternal entity being the driving force of action. And I just thought that was really great.
Well, a lot of that's structural reasons, because Willow's kind of being an irresponsible father right now. He is abandoning his wife and kids during harvest, and their farm is in danger of being foreclosed on by Burgle Cut. It's great for the kingdom that he is going to help this child, but for his own personal family, he is putting them at risk, and that's not usually something we want our fathers to do.
I always think about like the Spielberg quote. You know, he looks back on Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is a movie that he made before he had kids, and he says he looks back on it now since he's has kids, and he's like, I cannot believe I let the movie end that way, with like Richard Dreyfuss getting on the spaceship and going out to explore space and literally just abandoning his family. He's like, when I was younger and thinking back on that, like I could have understood that decision. Now that I have kids, I cannot understand that decision whatsoever. And I'm wondering if George Lucas was kind of having a similar thing here too. It's just because it is kind of a wild thing for a parent of two to sort of just like kind of up and disappear, just leave his wife to kind of handle things.
Yeah, but
it's like,
at the same time, he doesn't realize the mission he's going on.
Right.
Like he thinks he's going to be, it's like a 3-day walk to hand this baby off to
that's something I've never been 100% sure of. I've watched this movie 40 times in my life. I think somewhere ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
How long is this? Is this a week, a month, 6 months, a year? I still have no idea. And I was like actively trying to figure out the length of time.
And I think that kind of speaks to a degree to the efficiency at which they move through, because at no point is there like any indication that there's a long period of time, but there's also multiple places where you're like, well, time definitely had to have passed. They're somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we get that beautiful, is it James Horner or James Newton Howard doing the score? I always forget. It's a
don't remember either.
Let me double check. It's James Horner, excuse me. It's James Horner. And a really lovely score that you've probably heard in 10 million trailers over the years, because it just became one of those songs, you know.
It was in a million other trailers. They were like, I don't know, let's use the Willow music again. And every time it popped up, I was like, I remember that. That's Willow.
Yeah, I hear it's like a second only to like Dragon the Bruce Lee story for like, scores that just got used over and over again for movie trailers. It's just got that vibe, but it's lovely and it's really fun for what they did. You know, they shot this movie. Most of the exteriors are in New Zealand. So, you know, speaking of the Lord of the Rings movies, like you can't imagine that like people didn't look at this and obviously Peter Jackson is from New Zealand, so he has that personal relationship with it, but you can't help but look at this world and be like, yeah, that's a fantasy world. Like that is kind of a magical place like that you would write about in a fantasy novel. And so they were the first to kind of tap into that. And there were a couple like battle scenes, like I think of the showdown between the two witches in the tower, which felt a lot like the fight between Gandalf and Saruman. Like,
totally. This is like one of the first time I watched it, and I was like, wow, you are really... Peter Jackson had to get some inspiration from that, because it's hard to do a wizard duel. It really is. It's like, I'm pointing my wand as hard as I can. Watch me point harder.
You mean the Harry Potter, like tried and true, two people casting the same spell at each other and then just looking intense at each other to see who can do it harder?
Just kind of reverse tug of warring, like a beam of light back and forth.
Yeah.
This one makes it fun because, I know we're jumping around a lot, but like the climax of this is basically just an old lady slap fight that gets incredibly savage between these two elderly women throwing each other over tables and literally scratching each other's faces. And I'm like, damn, this is kind of savage. It's pretty fun, but it all feels, I feel like we get a good amount of what the history between these two characters is without them like laying it on super thick. We get a little bit that like Willow is like a magic sensitive character, but he's not like a powerful sorcerer, and he's not a guy with like his name inscribed on some scrolls somewhere like Elora Danan is. He is ultimately just a guy, and that always makes him relatable, and it always makes it an easy entry point into this world.
I think
if you
also
ever watch the making of documentary, George Lucas in it says, I always like my heroes to be the little guy underdog. So I wanted to show that even a little person can be the hero in
Absolutely.
a hero journey.
Talking about character introductions, I think they do them remarkably well in this movie. The introduction of Mad Mardigan in that crow's nest, sort of like that hanging chain jail thing, where you see dead bodies next to him, and it's just like it's such an interesting introduction to a character. It's both like it's both classic and because it's been used before, but it's also really genius because Val Kilmer is so interesting, and he goes from being this smarmy, sort of like belligerent asshole to being a hero at the end of the journey, at the end of the movie, and I really love that, and and it's so interesting that it's the little baby that makes him change his mind, like the Eric. I think it was the Galerodians that he fought for, and so he just definitely it's like the Han Solo problem of having somebody who's not committed, and just trying to get through life by banging other men's men's wives.
Headcanon.
Headcanon.
No, but it is the classic Han Solo archetype, and I love that they introduce him like all grimy and with like blackened teeth, and then literally next scene he just scrubbing the shit off his teeth. He's like, "Yep, it's me, Val Kilmer. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to look like this the whole movie."
He manages to do it in a way that doesn't feel like Han Solo, because his motivations, like J-Man said, Han Solo's motivations in Star Wars was money and women, and in this. It appears that is his motivation, but the only reason why he goes on this journey is the child. He's not getting paid for this. Whereas
everybody gets very charmed by this baby.
I think it's the baby, and I think it's him seeing Willow go out of his way to save this baby, and see how much care and taking care of him that Willow does, and I think that shows it inspires Mad Mardigan to be a better person, as getting yelled at that you don't drive that fast with a baby.
In the novel,
he's right.
In the novel, the baby actually has literal magical charm powers. When the midwife is escaping with the baby, wild animals came up to the midwife and let the baby suck milk out of them to keep the baby fed. And she's magical. She's literally magical.
Yeah, we should mention those books a little bit, because that's how sort of the official follow-up that we got. It was a trilogy of novels that came out between 1995 and 2000 called The Chronicles of the Shadow War. And for comic book nerds out there, it's written by Lucas and Chris Claremont. You might know Chris Claremont as maybe the most influential X-Men writer of all time. He wrote the Days of Future Past saga, and like God Loves, Man Kills, Dark Phoenix, like all these really totemic like arcs in the X-Men universe. I've never read the books, but it sounds like JR, they're worth reading.
No, absolutely not. Hard anti-recommend. I was actually talking about the Willow novelization of this movie. The Chris Claremont books, the first 25 pages are good because they're an actual Willow story. After that, Willow's no longer Willow. in the one of the most bizarre decisions I've ever heard of any continuation, they changed the main character's name and they kill off most of the characters you care about. It goes off in a completely different direction. No, most Willow fans are like, the Willow trilogy was our warning about the prequel trilogy.
Oh, damn. Okay. All right. That's hard. I didn't know it was quite that bad. But yeah, that seems like that might be one of the things that sort of put the nail in the coffin for this. And yeah, like I said, this movie was not a flop. It made like 60 million domestic, 130 international, like against that $40 million budget. But I think between marketing costs and everything like that, and just in between the hopes that they had for this, it fell short of expectations. But as was the case with a lot of movies during like the peak video store era, it became a beloved like rental staple. I know I rented this one a lot when I was a kid. My friends would rent it, and then it would play on like basic cable all the time. So there was like a good word of mouth sort of affection for this movie. And it was never like an outright panned movie. I think people liked it well enough when it came out. Maybe they're mostly focusing on the fact that it's a little derivative. But, you know, it's fantasy. Like every fantasy novel is derivative of each other in some form or another. It's just kind of like more than any other genre. I say that affectionately, but more than any other genre, I would say that's the one that drafts off of the forebears, you know, and I think Willow's just continuing that tradition.
And it also continues a tradition that fantasy is hard to do.
Yeah.
We have a couple of modern series that were fantastic books, or in case of the Silmarillion, what the fuck?
A compendium. Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah. I could never make it through that.
I've never made it through it. Honestly, I've read George R. Martin's fake history book about the House of Dragons, and it was easier to read than the Silmarillion because
100%.
It was just like but anyway, Rings of Power and the other one with the Gone Girl chick, you know what I'm talking about?
Rosamund Pike.
Yeah, Rosamund Pike.
Ooh,
does any of us remember what it's called?
Oh, it's the Robert Jordan, the Wheel of Time. It's Wheel of Time.
Oh God, yeah.
And so
I saw like the first few episodes of that and was not excited.
Fantasy is hard work, and to get a fantasy movie, let alone a fantasy franchise, off the ground, Willow worked really overtime, and Ron Howard landed the plane of Willow, which I'm sure he got a lot of background and a lot of information, and he manages to pare down that to an adventure romp that I have been on. And so one of the things is that we watch a lot of movies, and sometimes we watch movies and we only watch them once and we never watch them again. Willow is something that you watch, rewatch, you show to your children, you show to your friends. It's something that keeps going.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this has a good enduring legacy, which is why I find the most recent Willow development to be entirely aggravating. So for those who did not follow along with this, in 2021, Disney Plus released a Willow sequel TV series. I think it was 10 episodes or something like that. It was not super long, but we got one season of a Willow TV show. Warwick Davis came back. That show, I think, was on the streaming platform for 6 months, maybe that. And not only did Disney cancel the show, they deleted it entirely from their servers. The show cannot be acquired legally in any form. And all this happened before I ever had a chance to watch an episode.
Yeah. It can, if you're willing to pay the money. The reason why Disney took it off is residuals. If they keep airing it, the contracts say they have to pay the cast, but apparently the viewership was so ridiculously low. And viewership on streaming is a lot lower than we think, by the way. A lot of these hit streaming shows are 1 to 2 million views that we get just laughed at back in the TV days. But
well, it's just so spread out, right? Every TV show, there's 800 million TV shows, and they're all masterpieces, and we can never watch all of them.
Well,
Somebody had pointed out recently to me, and I agree. And it like this was Netflix specifically. They're like, Netflix keeps making it, they keep removing little pieces of the search functionality and like the browsing functionality. So it's harder than ever to find stuff. So you also have this problem of like, there's so much content, it's spread out all over. And then some of the services aren't even doing a good job at promoting anything but like their primary 5 shows, that you just end up missing stuff you would have loved. You couldn't find it easily when you open the thing. It wasn't like, hey, we recommend this thing you might actually like. It's, hey, we recommend this thing that we spent a lot of money on that we recommend to everyone because we want it to be watched.
And there's definitely a level of saturation, and like you don't get to watch things like there's this pressure to binge even if you have no time to watch it. Like for example, like I love Interview with the Vampire, but I didn't get around to watching it when it was on AMC. I watched it when I was on Netflix, and that's my bad. I was in error. It's so good.
That's the thing. It's just one of those things that's so frustrating. The streaming landscape is so constantly in flux. Like things are always moving from one service to another, or dropping off, or the series is evolving, or the services are merging. So it's really hard to just kind of pin down where something is. And I think by deleting this show forever, they're just shooting themselves in the foot, because I think we've seen over and over, particularly with like fantasy and sci-fi stuff, if it doesn't hit it first, it will find an audience. You just have to give it time.
I completely agree. And it's just like the fact that it was only around for 6 months is a travesty. Because like I would definitely, like if I had tonight, I would turn it on if I could. And it was just like some things just need to have more time to find their legs. And this is, I don't know, this is a huge problem I have with all streaming services. Is like so many of my favorite television shows, their first season was crap.
Right. Buffy. Buffy is a good example. Buffy is a terrible
Seinfeld would have never made it in the streaming era.
Parks and Rec
would have never made it. All these things. But I feel so blessed because when Willow the television show was coming out, my son had just got into D&D. I was the D&D group for his group of friends who all came over to the house, and we got to a pattern where we would play a D&D, and then once the boys started getting a little too antsy, I'd be like, okay, this is a good point to end the session, and then we'd watch an episode of the Willow TV show. We started off with a Willow movie, and then we would all watch the TV show, 1 episode per session. So it got to be like serialized viewing, and I think I was about half the viewership for Willow in that case, because
how was it?
Well, they liked it. None of them became huge Willow fans, but they liked it well enough that they were excited to watch it. And we got through the entire series, and they were like, cool, what happens next? And I was like, I don't know. And then I found out it got canceled, and then it got removed. And it was just all right, we'll never see that again. But I did expose my son to Willow. We'll talk about him playing the Willow video game in a second, but I think my son is like one of the youngest people I know who has a decent knowledge of Willow, and he's not going to pass that on to anybody at all. It is never going to mean anything to him well enough to show it to his kids. So whatever Willow is, it is right now. I do not think this franchise has any future whatsoever.
Or past its peak. Yeah, and it's interesting because just looking at Rotten Tomatoes, it looks like it might have scored better than the movie did. So
the movie didn't really get a lot of respect. I mean, it was received politely, but like I think people were just stuck on the derivative stuff, and they were just focusing on like, oh, look, it's really pretty. The special effects look great. Like, you don't need to take it very seriously. And maybe that's true. You know, this isn't a super challenging piece. This isn't really giving you anything that you don't expect it to give you, but I think it does everything so exceptionally well.
I feel like this movie has more of a legacy than you think, and it's not just with the Lord of the Rings. It's also with the Mandalorian and Grogu. It's also
Right.
with like all of these quests where you're transporting a tiny cute thing. I feel like this movie has a huge legacy about like tiny cute escort journey. TV and movies that have been wildly popular.
Yeah. And yeah, I would like to hope that like somebody would find it, and maybe in a post Lord of the Rings world, this movie is like irrelevant. But I don't know. I think there's still so much charm to be had here.
There is in the movie. I just don't think the TV show was very good. I was glad I got to watch it with my son, but they made numerous mistakes. Willow's not the hero of it, which is weird. They make it about a lot of characters we don't know, and they fail to capture the magic of Willow. Willow is fundamentally a light sword and sorcery film. It is. And they didn't do that. They didn't give me more Willow. They did their own weird thing that didn't gel.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard some like kind of mixed things on it, but it sounded like it was going for at least a little bit of a different vibe than the series was. And I balk against the idea of I don't want to have to pay this creative person for the work that he did, so I'm just going to delete his work forever, and nobody will ever see a dime off of it. Yeah. That just seems like such a shitty, slippery slope to me. Oh yeah, that it drives me crazy.
It's the real danger of the streaming era. Honestly, I'm not that huge of a physical collector. I'm downsizing as much as I can these days. But there's things like the Willow thing where I'm like, okay, they never released it in Blu-ray. There's no way for you to legally watch this. And it's like, what? I don't like giving you that much power. I don't like you being able to take this away forever and no one to be able to watch it.
Yeah. I don't know. That's just the part that really chafes against me, is that we're just throwing it to the wind, because Willow was a slow burn, and it took a little while for it to find it. But I think, and it might be a movie that kind of goes the way of the dinosaurs when people around our age finally shuffle off. But like I think it is something that like means something to at least our generation, and I'm always happy to watch it.
I think it means so much because like it's actually a good fantasy, because it combines some of it has Indiana Jones-esque set pieces when they're like going down a mountain on a sled. And they have sword fights. They have a two-headed dragon that breathes fire. It's like they managed to hit these really great things whilst not getting bogged down in them. And I think that this movie, for fantasy nerds of our age, was a huge reason why we got into fantasy, into books, into movies, and I feel like this is definitely a gateway into fantasy for the young children of the 80s.
That's the other thing to mention too, is that of that list of fantasy films we listed that came out in the 80s and didn't connect, none of them are fun. Like, they are all very, very serious and gloomy and grim. Even like Dark Crystal is quite gloomy and serious. This one is fun. It's lightweight. It's swashbuckling. Yeah. It has action set pieces, and it has jokes, and it has funny little guys like wisecracking, one of which is Kevin Pollak at a very early phase of his career. But, it had a little bit more of a buoyant energy than something like Krull, which actually we will cover on this show. So prepare to talk about the glaive down the line. But, so that's something that I always appreciate that it tried to do. Like, it's not a kid's movie outright, but it is a movie that kids can really, lock into. Which is probably why they marketed this with a couple of video games, if we're ready to start transitioning to talk about the games.
I think we are.
There's two.
I'll just give a quick shout out of the board game, though.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about this. Yeah.
So I loved this as a kid. because one team plays the bad guys and one team plays the good guys. So you could play it either 2-player or 4-player. And you couldn't, if you played it 4-player, you weren't supposed to talk until your characters were physically next to each other. So you had to try to strategize without talking to each other. And it's also kind of a deck building game while you move around the board. When Magic the Gathering came out, I went, oh, it's just like Willow, the board game.
Yeah.
It holds up. It's a 1988 board game, so it's a little clunky by modern standards. But for a licensed board game, I think it's like maybe the best I've ever played. I can't think of what other movie board game I played would top it.
It looks like it scores kind of in the upper 5, lower 6, like on a out of 10 scale rating on average. So,
I mean, if they're judging it by modern standards, that's fair. But by 1988 standards, I think it's higher than that.
Yeah, and even then, like I think we've been spoiled in the last decade in board games because a lot of money has shifted towards that. It's the thing where like it became more popular, so people started making better games. And so, and I guess even like 20 years. And so, it's crazy to me that the game even came out, but that also, it was also like a solid game and not just like a throwaway, similar to the video games, which seem like people actually put some effort into it.
Absolutely. I think, so there's two major ones that we're going to be talking about. One of them is an arcade game that I think has been largely forgotten, but is worth tracking down. And the other is going to be for NES. Let's start with the arcade game because this one, if you want to play this, just like search for it. I think you can find it on certain websites, like playable in your browser. That's how we got to experience it a little bit. And it is a side-scrolling, like action beat 'em up kind of adventure game with some pretty beautiful sprite graphics. The gameplay itself, I think we were struggling with kind of the awkward controllers on the emulator, which is like nobody's fault really, other than the emulator. But once you kind of lock into the oddball controls a little bit, then you'll have a good time. I don't know. This is a very tough game, but if you're playing it in the emulator, you have unlimited quarters. I think it was definitely designed to be a bit of a quarter suck because
I played this game in the arcade. I did. And I was like so stoked and so excited when I saw it because I think I saw it in like 1990, 1991, something like that. And I was like, Willow, I love Willow. And I played it and it was like eating up my quarters so much. And I always wanted to beat it in the arcade, but it was a quarter a play. And I love the fact that I farmed gold in an arcade game. That blew me away. I would just like try to kill as many guys and just wait for them to respawn as much as possible just to get the gold at that first stage where you buy upgrades from the shop. And I don't think I'd ever seen that in an arcade game before. And it blew me away and I loved it. And I never ever came close to passing it until the age of emulation.
Oh yeah. I think you would kind of need to, unless you are just like a billionaire with just like stacks of quarters next to you and like nothing but free time, because this is designed to get as many coins out of you as humanly possible. But it is also one of those games that's like fun enough on its face that you're kind of be tempted, like I even just playing the emulator, I was like getting really frustrated and dying a lot, but I'm also like, I kind of want to keep going. I kind of want to see if I can finish this thing out. I haven't yet, but I kind of want to plug back into it. I think this game's really fun.
I needed a FAQ to defeat it, even with emulation.
Oh, really?
Because there's a maze at the end where you go in and out of doors to get to Bad Morta. And that is like so evil in an arcade game. It's like one thing to remember a maze in a home game, but in an arcade game, fuck you.
Especially when it's at the end, so that you
at the very end.
You've spent so much to get there, and then if you don't make it, if you die in the maze and you have to start over and come back another day, it's like, all right.
So I did have a Willow day. This happened like 4 years before I did the D&D group with my son. So it was the first time I was going to expose him to Willow. We played the board game together. We watched the movie together. And then I tried to get us to pass the arcade game together. And he was getting very frustrated at the end, and I was getting frustrated at the end. So I distracted him and loaded up a YouTube video of someone beating the Willow board game. And then I pretended that I was the one beating the arcade game just so he could see the ending.
Diabolical.
Yeah.
I hope he's not listening to this, so your ruse will be exposed. That's a good way to go. But I mean, the game that I was exposed to, I've never played this in an arcade except here at the Fallout Theater in Austin. If you find the little arcade machine in the lobby, they have this game on there. So hot tip, if you want to play it. Yeah, if you want to play it on an arcade machine, that's where you can find it.
Oh, I've played a few things, but I didn't really dig.
That's a hyper niche thing for people in Austin, but if you want to go do that, you can. But I was exposed to the NES game when it first came out because it looked like this fun, exciting thing. This is developed by Capcom, 1989. Both of these are developed by Capcom. So I feel like Capcom has a good sort of base level quality. You know, there are obviously a couple of outliers that like really suck, but I think most Capcom games are going to be pretty solid and pretty polished. And I think that's the case with this one. They did not go the arcade route with the NES game. Instead, they went with like light Zelda clone, light RPG, a little bit of like top-down action game.
I had so much fun with this game, especially the first time we played it. The first time we played it, I got much further than I did the other day because we were doing it after we'd already recorded a podcast, so I was a little tired. But this game is so charming. It is definitely it's just fun. Like it has this great pixelated score that's just so fun, and you just get to wander around and slash and go into things, and it's just it's so charming. I know you think I'm crazy for liking it as much as I do.
No, I like this game too. I think it's insanely difficult, and it's hard to make a lot of progress in it, especially, and that's just common of the NES era. JR, was this you were a Willow obsessed kid during the prime of the NES years? Did you play this back in the day?
I rented it in the video store, and
nice.
I never got far enough. I did enjoy it. I thought it was a decent start, but I was really hampered by not having a Nintendo Power issue that would just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
When I played Zelda as a kid, I followed the instructions. I got the thing, and it was okay, this is how I go. I needed more help than I had for this game, so I never pulled the trigger and bought it, but I thought it was a really solid version of Willow, and I wished I would have played it more.
It's the right way to adapt this property, because if you're going to follow the hero's journey as beat by beat as this movie does, I think it makes sense that you adapt it into the video game genre that works the best with that format, right? The RPG and the level progression and everything like that is what you need. The thing that really made an impression on me when I was a kid, and I still think this is cool, is that Willow is bad with his sword at level 1, and he noticeably gets stronger and faster with his sword as you progress in levels. That's something I really respond to in games. If I can really feel my character getting stronger over the course of the game, I'm going to be really locked in. And I think this is the first time I can recall really clocking that and noticing that the game had that active design. So I think that's really cool. I mean, it is a pretty punishing game. You get a shield eventually, but the shield mechanics on NES were awkward. Think back to Zelda 2 for anybody who played that one back in the day. You have to just be a lot of you using the shield is just holding still at the right time, not pressing a button at the right time. And that's kind of hard to calibrate. And I didn't find the shield particularly effective in this game at all, so sometimes you walk into a screen and you just get swarmed by trolls and you're dead before you have a chance to really react, and oftentimes in games like this, that's just a sign you need to wander around and get a little stronger and come back later. But it is a little frustrating if you kind of just want to see a little bit more of the story. That being said, yeah, I think the graphics are really kind of pleasant. It's a great sprite of Willow. The music, I'm surprised they didn't use any of the music from the movie because that's such an iconic score. What they got sounds kind of like theme to a summer place. If people know that song, the da 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 da, it sounded kind of like that to me. But maybe it was just a licensing issue with that. But I don't know. I quite enjoy both of these games. I think they're both pretty solid representations of what Willow does well.
I think the arcade game we should mention is so colorful, and like they have the creepy dog creatures, hounds that go after the baby. I have to say, as a child, I found those things to be terrifying.
Oh yeah.
We haven't mentioned the death dogs. They scared the crap out of me.
Yeah. You know what got me was the trolls that like are crawling on the underside of the bridge, you know, with like Willow's running over it and they're just like skittering along below it. That image freaked me out. And the dragon I just thought was amazing. Yeah.
The dragon was like the dragon creeped me out a little bit. Like I don't like the dragon of like the weird face thing. Like, oh gosh, that dragon is definitely creepier in my imagination than most regular dragons.
Absolutely. And this was really like we didn't really mention much of the special effects, but it really was a showcase for Industrial Light and Magic, which is Lucas's sort of in-house effects team. We shout them out whenever we can because they were doing some amazing stuff. There's a lot of like Phil Tippett, like fast motion, like stop motion animation going on here. And this got an Oscar nomination for visual effects. Like it's really good, and you can see the seams looking at it now. There's definitely like some backdrop stuff and some green screen stuff that looks a little creaky, but like you're still admiring the craft of it, and I think it looks quite good.
Looking at like 1988 effects where they used CGI.
Yeah.
They developed a process to morph a character from an animal into another animal.
Yeah.
It's the first time that's ever been done. It's honestly probably the biggest long-lasting impact Willow had, honestly.
Yeah.
They invented the process for it. They invented a process for it and the software for it, and then people went on to derivate from that afterwards.
Yeah.
As always, ILM pushes as much as they can, and it was so fun to see the way that they handled having 5-inch tall characters in the mix with full, you know.
Yeah, the brownies were a bunch of fun. They're like they're the comic relief, and they were such silly little ideas because like I definitely come from the Brian Froud version of fairies and pixies and that type of thing. Where you have these things that are dangerous, mischievous, and just after their own agenda.
Yeah, and they're just kind of like a couple of wacky little guys, a little comic relief. But when I was a kid, that's what brought me in on this movie was like those funny guys. And then once I got past that, then I wasn't so scared of like the dragons and the trolls and all of that stuff, you know. So yeah, so it's important stuff to have them in there.
You stopped being scared of the dragons and the trolls this week, right?
I did just now. Yeah, a recent thing. Yeah, so it's a milestone moment for me, and I'm really happy for myself. Well, I think we've about said everything there is to say about Willow. Do we have any final thoughts before we move on to our final thoughts?
No, I think we're good.
I think we got it. Let's move on to our rankings. Each week, we are ranking the properties we talked about on a scale of good movie, good game to bad movie, bad game, or whatever iteration comes between. J-Ban, why don't you kick us off? Show us how it's done.
So I think this movie is great. I'm going to put a couple of notes on that. One, it was great as a child. I think it's great now. I think it holds up, and I really enjoy it. And I can't emphasize how tender, like I have a soft spot in my heart for this movie that is just like it creates such a dreamy feeling of joy watching this movie. And then I think they're good games.
Great. Absolutely. Justin, where are you coming down?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. It's a solid movie. It's a pretty good movie. I won't say it's an incredible movie, but when this is the genre, you don't have a ton of options. We've been getting a lot of options in the 2000s, 2010s, but you don't have a whole lot of options from before then, and especially not options like this, which are so not reliant on computer generated imagery. I know we just talked about how they had some very inventive stuff, but this movie is almost entirely practical. It still holds up very well. The plot is great. It's a fun time, and the games were also fun. It was, again, with the caveats that they're hard and maybe you need guides.
Yeah, definitely tough. Definitely something to wrap your head around. JR, where do you come down?
I'm going to say this is a great movie and a great game. I really think the arcade game is like some peak Capcom hack and slash of the time. The graphics were absolutely mind-blowing to me in 1990. The NES game, I still want to play today. I've picked it up and I've played it, and I've been like, I wish I was a free-time millionaire instead of a highly busy middle-aged man, because I could really get into this if I have my strategy guide next to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like a great weekend to just check it off and say, yes, I have passed the Willow NES game. The movie, I've shown it to my son, I've shown it to my wife. Neither of them had any emotional attachment to him, but they both enjoyed it. I have a ton of emotional attachment to it. I will always love this movie. I'm going to show it to my grandkids someday.
Love to hear it. Yeah, I'm coming down the same place. JR, you were the host of 30-20-10 for several years, and a lot of the things you all were doing on that show is kind of confronting nostalgia, challenging nostalgia, and answering the question, was it great or was I 8? Which I always thought was a great phrase. I think this passes that test. I think, yes, I was 8, but it was also pretty great. I think this is a really slickly produced, entertaining movie. Like, you don't need to be a high fantasy super fan to really get involved in this. It's fast moving, it's entertaining, it's well acted, it's well staged. Like, I just really have no complaints about Willow. I think it's a blast. And I really enjoy both of these games as well, with the caveats that they are punishingly hard. But yeah, I think I'm with you. Like, if I had a little bit more free time, or maybe was just better at retro games, I would probably be sticking this one out a little bit. I still remember it as sort of a formative early movie. And yeah. So yeah, I had a great time with it, and it was pretty awesome. So well, it was a delight to have you back on, JR. I'm glad we were able to coax you out of retirement for this one. People could still find 30-20-10 out there. Yes, it hasn't been Willow,
yeah, it's
TV
been
series.
archived, and I'm not kidding when I say if you want to listen to it as 40-30-20, it works great because
it really does.
It's still bringing you back to those weeks of the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. And I'm actually listening to it right now. Every Thursday, I pull it up and I just re-listen to the episode from 10 years ago, and it still works.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can find that. You can find Patreon content where you can hear me from time to time talking about horror movies and various other things. And that's it's just patreon.com/lasertime. Is that right?
That's right.
Absolutely. Yes. You can find a ton of bonus content. There's countless hours of JR. I'm missing having 30-20-10 in my ears every week, but I'm glad that you've been able to successfully put a cap on that project.
Yeah. And it may not happen, but there may be a return of me in some podcast. It's in the works. We will see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we eagerly look forward to that. And we eagerly look forward to next week's episode because, hoo boy, are we pulling out a deeply weird one. We are going to be talking about what I think has to be the loosest film adaptation of all time. I don't know if anybody has any guesses off of that, just based off of that sentence alone. JR, do you have a guess about what you think might be the loosest adaptation of a book of all time?
Jesus Christ. That's a really big...
Deeply strange movie.
Yeah.
Deeply strange movie, so much that the author took his name off of it.
I know it.
What do you got? Hit me.
The Lawnmower Man.
It is The Lawnmower Man.
Yes!
Exactly. Well done. One of the deeply weirdest movies of the 90s. We are going to be talking about that movie, which presaged a lot of our VR technology, as well as the Super NES video game, which attempts to do some first-person shooter stuff on the Super NES. It's a very weird franchise. I'm excited to get into it and talk about just how wildly it deviated from the story. So tune in next week for The Lawnmower Man, and we will see you all next time.